We're trying not to get lost. And no, it's a beautiful, beautiful day. So we somehow ended up on a different trail heading back. We're not really sure where we're going, but there are lots of detours here, and hopefully we're on the right path. Still feeling good, got plenty of water, so I guess we'll just see what happens. Hey everybody, welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. It is August 10th, and I'm including the date only because today's episode is a bit of an unusual one. We are going to be doing two recordings, a pre and a post event, and I have my husband Eric with me.
Hello.
Hey. And it is episode 29 of the podcast, and this will actually be the last of the season 2. I have some exciting guests lined up for season 3, so stay tuned for that. But what is today about? Well, it's mostly just a fun, casual conversation with my husband about our upcoming trail running adventure, how we decided on the route we picked and some goals that we have for that, and just our experience getting back into trail running this summer after being quarantined in New York City for a while. And of course, we just had a baby about 10 months ago, so we have not been having many adventures of any kind other than kid-related ones for quite some time. We're recording actually out in California, where we've been spending the summer on a deck. So if you hear any dogs barking or hawks, I don't know, they've been like screeching lately. I don't know what's going on.
Are the coyotes out there?
We did see a coyote the other day. So anyways, if you hear some wildlife in the distance, that is why. Don't worry, they're not in the house. Anyways, so what is today about? Really, what inspired me to do this episode is obviously races are canceled. Events are canceled of all kind. I guess there are a few in-person things going on, but most of them are canceled. There are some virtual ones. But other than that, really, people are just taking it in their own hands to challenge themselves and do some really exciting stuff. So, even with COVID going on and all the cancellations, you can go on Instagram or anywhere else and really see how many people from really all levels, from elite to recreational, getting out there and challenging themselves in such a variety of ways, and not just with trail running, but with all kinds of sports and distances. So when we came out here, when we were packing back in early June, and we were thinking, well, we're definitely going to run together in the trails and do all that, but we really didn't know that we would have an opportunity to do something longer. And by long, we're not doing anything super duper long. Some people out there, the elites especially, some are doing these like 100, 200, 300 plus mile efforts out there and FKTs and all of that. But long for us, given our history, and we'll go into that a little bit. But so we didn't really pack appropriately, but we kind of brought some things with the hope of doing at least some, a couple hours on the trail here and there. My parents are watching the kiddos, and, we obviously didn't want to ask for too many hours of that beyond what they could handle. So it's been a really actually pleasant surprise that we've been able to hit the trails as much as we have for basically one long run a week in our favorite forest ever, Nicene Marks in Aptos, California. And really, such a unexpected, exciting thing that we were able to plan a bigger adventure, which is actually happening in 2 days on Wednesday, August 13th. So this is our pre-discussion where we're going to kind of go into the background of all this and really, in the hopes of maybe just showing an example of how we prepared. We're, of course, going to talk nutrition, obviously, but route choice goals, a bunch of other things. And then after we do the whole thing, we're going to do a post recap and kind of just explain how it all went. Because as I'm sure all you guys know, it doesn't always go as planned, although we obviously hope for a great day. So that's kind of what this is all about. And if you are not planning your own adventure or haven't yet, we hope maybe this will inspire you to get out there and do something fun for yourself. So before we dive into all of that, I wanted to also take the opportunity to talk a little bit about my own running background. In previous podcasts, when I'm interviewing people, I've kind of touched upon here and there that I've run some marathons and ultras, and that I love trail running, that I've taken a hiatus because of the babies. I've kind of gone here and there, but I haven't actually necessarily gone into it in any detail or coherent fashion. So just briefly, I'm going to run through my running background. Eric's going to take you through his running background, just to kind of, just to put it out there. So for me, as some of you may know, I started running marathons back in 2010. I was a high school cross-country runner, so I've been running for a while. I grew up in Santa Cruz, California, although sadly did not really take advantage of all the trails out here at the time, but kind of got into running later in life. The distance stuff in particular got into when I was living out in the UK for a number of years, and started running marathons, mostly road, and started getting a little bit more into the trail stuff actually after meeting my husband. Well, we were not quite yet married, but we actually met or bonded over running as I was training for my first marathon, and running together is very meaningful for us. He's definitely my favorite running buddy, and we've done a lot of runs and exciting adventures over the years. So again, being able to do this adventure together is very special, especially because we usually do not have childcare. So disappearing for an entire day is usually not an option, let alone running together for like an hour. But anyways, when Ariel, my 3-year-old, was born, I kind of quickly got into running. I got injured. I took a lot of time off, and I was able to kind of get back into things, but not beyond the half marathon level. I just personally, for me, I didn't really have the desire or the motivation to get back into long stuff. I really just wanted to spend time with my family. I just wanted to run in a fun, unstructured way, just in a way that felt good to me, especially after being injured and getting back into running again. And that kind of stuck with me for a while. And then I got pregnant again and stopped running pretty early on in my pregnancy just because it felt horrible. And this time really took my time getting back into running. And man, has it paid off. It was so worth it. I feel stronger than ever now. And, Isla is 10 months now. And, I started running not that long ago. I forget. When did I start running, Eric? A few months ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
During quarantine, I think you started a little bit into it.
Yeah, so I've really eased into it. I was doing a lot of pre and postpartum PT that was focused on very, slowly easing back into things. And even during quarantine, I was only running like once a week. I was Pelotoning. I just, with all the masks and everything else, it's just running in New York. It wasn't exactly that exciting. And then we come out here, and I think the longest I'd run was an hour and a half once. And I came out here and I hadn't trail run in forever. And, everything was flat in New York that I was doing. So we came out here and it was very, well, first of all, it was amazing and beautiful and refreshing, but it was hard. So, but it really kind of stoked that passion that I have for trail running and especially for the longer stuff. And it gave me an opportunity to kind of dip back into figuring out my own nutrition. I work so often with all my clients on their nutrition plans, and it's been ages since I've really had to do it for myself. And, my bodies and needs have changed, and my tastes are different, tolerance is different. So it's been a really interesting experience for me. Anyways, that was a lot longer than I meant it to be. But since I hadn't really gone into my own experience, I kind of wanted to just explain it to you guys, since I'm always talking about other people. So why not talk about myself for once in this regard? I'm going to turn it over to Eric now, and he can chat a little bit about his running background.
Yeah, it's not so exciting, really. I didn't run a ton growing up at all. But when I was living in the UK, I was always a big hiker, and so I would always go on these like really long hikes or these multi-day hikes. And I think I kind of got into trail running when you kind of realize that if you're willing to move a little bit faster, you can cover more ground and do some more interesting things. So I think when I met Claire, I had been doing some trail running. I had been doing some half marathons. I still hadn't done any marathon distance. I think I had started that once I met you.
2010.
Yeah, and then, but then that slowly escalated to longer distances and different types of things. A dozen road marathons later, probably double-digit ultra marathons, 50Ks, 50 milers, mostly trail later. And, I think I've kind of also kind of with the stress of daily life, you kind of revert back to kind of, okay, what can you kind of, we're not professionals, right? So, or I'm not a professional. So you kind of revert back to like, what can you get away with in terms of finding the joy in doing the running that you really like, and also kind of getting the training in when you have to like, deal with kids and everything else. I guess we'll talk a little bit about the training for this is a little bit of a different thing, but even when we were in New York, like trying to figure out like, okay, how do you balance a schedule even before quarantine with little kids so you're not sacrificing family time, you're not sacrificing work, and you're not putting yourself at a disadvantage where you're going to do something really stupid and risk injury or something else. So I think for being out in California now, it's really incredible to have access to all of these wonderful trails and nature, and you really just have to kind of take every day as a gift, I think. So that's really kind of like my mindset, kind of thinking about kind of the run in a couple of days, and kind of even beyond that, when all this madness is over, kind of really just taking it one day at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing Eric didn't mention, so you started running ultras in 2014, and Eric definitely got me into the ultra stuff. I don't think I ever would have really contemplated doing that. I mean, maybe I would have, I don't know, 50K, but we ran our first we actually ran all the ultras I've run with him. And for me, the whole experience of running long, because I had paced, Eric's done JFK 50 numerous times, and the first time he did it, I believe in 2014, I paced, I think like 20-ish miles with you.
Yeah, it was all towpath.
Yeah, not intentionally though. I hadn't meant to be pacing that much.
That's for people that don't know, that's like one of the largest 50 milers in the country. And when I say large, I mean it's like the field's like 1,000 people. It's not huge, but kind of what you get out of it is you get a little bit of the bug, because the sense of community, the sense of like people looking after each other, and kind of just the experience of it, really can't be beat. I think that kind of feeling gets copied all over the place, and that's kind of what people are looking for. And if anything about the quarantine is kind of the most interesting piece about it so far has been that sense of community that kind of makes that, whether it's the ultra runners or the trail runners special, that seems to still be there and just coming out in a lot of different ways. So I think that's really we've kind of attached to the right art form, if it is an art form. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, pacing Eric and JFK definitely inspired me and motivated me. I mean, seeing him at the end, I mean, he was like destroyed, but it just like, I just was like, oh my God, I have to do something like this, which is like such a crazy thing. But anyone who's run, you don't even have to run a marathon or something long to really experience it. Anytime you've pushed yourself, if you've never run before and you're running a 3K or 5K or something, anything you've done before that's been so hard and you've reached the finish line of it and just felt so accomplished. And I think all of you know what I'm talking about. It's just such an amazing feeling, an addicting feeling.
And it's, I hate to say it's a cliche, but
it is, but
but it's a cliche for a reason. And also, like a lot longer you go, it becomes a mental battle. It's a problem solving battle. And, victory is kind of, you don't have to finish for it to be, like a personal victory. And I think that's kind of a nice place, and you can apply it to so many different aspects of your life. I mean, there's no, with our kids, like there's no winning those battles.
Yeah.
Oh my God. The war continues.
Yeah. Our constant war with our 3-year-old. Oh my God. But yeah, so I just remember watching him and just thinking like I want to, like, how far can I push myself? And that's something you can really see across the board with any type of athlete, recreational or professional or otherwise. Everyone's constantly trying to push themselves, So, that's really what we were aiming for with what we're going to talk about today, and the run that we're doing. It's a challenge for us in this moment. What we're doing is not necessarily, long in air quotes per se, especially compared to some other people, but, who cares, right? It's not about what other people are doing. It's about what we are able and wanting to do in this moment. And this is where we're at. So, and really most importantly, at least for me, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about goals, but running together is very, very, very special. And I don't know if there are any running couples listening, but especially when you have kids, you're often just playing, tag and taking turns doing things. And in New York, we don't have family nearby to help us out. And obviously, we have sitters and all those things, but with COVID, we couldn't really do that. So it's been so incredible being able to be out here. And, we've been basically, running together, I'd say on average, at least 2 or 3 times a week. We'll talk a little more about the training, but it's been really, really, really special. And I remember saying to Eric, while running along in Nicene one weekend, even if like suddenly like the numbers, because numbers aren't great in California, although not where we are, but elsewhere. But even if some like all the state parks get shut down and this whole thing doesn't happen, like who cares? Like it's really truly has been about the journey, and every run that we've done has been so much fun. And even though we're training for this thing, like it's just another day. Like we already have other things planned afterwards. So it's really, I don't know, it's been an opportunity, at least for me, to just have fun with running. And really, after so many years of racing and taking it all so seriously, especially out on the roads with times and Boston qualifying, blah, 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 whatever, I, turned to the trails and really was just ready to focus on other things. And now truly it's just been all about getting my running mojo back and really just running when I want to, running when my body feels like it, doing what I feel able to do, and, doing what brings me joy, which sounds kind of silly, but really, truly, that's what it's been all about. And the last point before moving on is Eric runs, by the way, at like 4:30 in the morning in New York normally, which I cannot do. He runs so early. That's how we train. And then I usually would run like, sometime in the morning when the baby's asleep or something. So back in New York, that's kind of how we handled it. And again, like being able to just run at a reasonable hour when the sun's actually out in a really beautiful environment together has been quite nice.
I remember that first run where I was like, hey, something feels really different here. Oh, wait, the sun is out.
Yes. So that's been pretty special. Okay, so we're going to move on to goals. We'll keep this simple. I mean, for me, really, I just wanted to do something new. We always run in Nicene marks when we're out here, because usually we're out here for a very short period of time. We have family obligations. We have to get in and out, especially with kids. Like, my parents are like, you have an hour or whatever it is. And actually, no, they're pretty generous with their time. I'll take that back. But, we don't want to take advantage of their time. So we kind of just try to keep it short and sweet, close to home, because the trailheads are, 10, 15 minutes away. And we don't really get a chance to explore very much. So for this thing that we were thinking about doing, we just wanted to do something kind of new, obviously fun, something challenging. It needed to be together, obviously. And most importantly, we just wanted to escape the kids. Yay! So that for me, it was just my goal. And obviously just having a good day and staying safe. And yeah. What about you, Eric?
Yeah, about the same. I mean, I think because of the, obviously I didn't give birth or anything, but I think just, kind of being a partner in that, we kind of took a hiatus on races and other things when we thought they were still happening. But, secretly I was hoping to kind of gear up for a larger race in the fall. I know you were too, and it just seems the likelihood of that is just not, really going to happen. But, that drive is still there, just to have, have something on the calendar. I think in whatever timetable you can figure out really helps, line up the other parts of your training and health and life. And so even if it's like a modest goal, I think it's like, number one goal, have a good day, have fun. Number two goal, having something on the calendar can kind of help shape the other decisions you make through your life and through like the day-to-day grind. So I think that's really kind of like where my head is at.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In terms of route choice, so this really was just a bucket list item for both of us. So I don't know if any of you have heard of the Skyline to Sea Trail out in California, Northern California, but it begins, where does it begin, Eric?
In the sky. So
up above a cloud.
So I had never really...
We skydive and then land in the ocean. No.
Yeah. So I never really heard of like this route. Claire knows all these parks, by name or by reputation. And so when we started doing the research, Skyline to Sea, it starts deep in Big Basin Park, in the north end of the park, and then it heads all the way south. It's a point-to-point route. It's about, I don't know, like 30 to 35 miles, something like that, depending on, your GPS approach of choice, and then it ends at the water. And I think there's like a trail marathon or an ultra that goes from point to point. So it looked really beautiful. There's a lot of redwoods. I mean, I've never been over there, so it's something new. But when we looked at it and we were kind of looking at the logistics of it, we realized that, well, if you go to one end, what you would do is you would go to one end, you get dropped off, and then you would get picked up, or somebody would have your car at the other end. But the problem is, because we had to come back for our very young children, we're like, okay, well, if we do that, this isn't going to be, like a half day effort. It could be much longer than that. And how do we organize around that? It just logistically, it seemed quite challenging. Also, we weren't really sure what kind of shape we were going to be in, because our training, and I guess you'll talk about that, was very compressed. And so we didn't want to expose ourselves to any sort of overuse injuries in the ramp up to the volume. I definitely am not in 50K shape right now. It's also net downhill if you do that point to point. So that means you would be, thrashing your quads, etc. It just didn't seem like the smartest idea. So what we wound up figuring out is that, well, if you start at the beach at the bottom end and you go into the park going uphill, you can turn around and kind of do whatever mileage you want. So we found a good turnaround point, maybe like 10, 11 miles in. There's supposed to be potable water there that we can get to refuel.
So basically in Big Basin.
In Big Basin, and then turn around. And the nice thing about it is, well, if there's a real problem or we're having some difficulty, we can cut it short and we turn around and we know exactly how far we have to go. We know the terrain because we've been over it before. It gives us a lot of opportunities to manage the safety aspect of it, given COVID and everything else. And it simplifies the logistics. And, God bless Strava, because it's not like we're so creative. I mean, people have done this. And the nice thing is you can kind of gauge the timing, because there's like a dozen people that have done this exact route, probably for similar reasons. So, when you look at the publicly available Strava segments, you can see like, okay, these people have done this. It's taken them X hours based upon these, this very conservative pacing. This is kind of the pacing we've done in our training when we were really pushing it. We kind of have an idea about how to plan for it. So that's kind of how we did the initial route choice. Anything I'm missing?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add, really the main thing is, in an ideal world, so as Eric said, we had basically we're about 2 months to train for this.
The trailhead, but I'm sorry, the trailhead is actually really close to it. It's only like 30 or 40 minutes away.
Yeah, so the trail is about 30, 40 minutes away without traffic. So hopefully we're going to do it
on 10 hours with traffic.
We're doing it on a weekday morning and leaving as early as we can, only because the parks here, I don't know what it's like around you guys, but out here, like even Nicene, it's been jammed on weekends. I mean, even not on weekends, it's been crazy. And I've been running in Nicene so long, and when I would go early on a Saturday or Sunday, like I would be, there'd be a few runners or bikers, whatever. But I mean, this is just crazy. So it's been, which is amazing. Like as I told Eric the other day, like I'm so happy that people are getting out and being active and exploring. And if it took a pandemic to make people be more active, like great. But at the same time, like they're like hordes of people, and I'm just used to my quiet, peaceful running paths. And I don't know, but so we just have to leave extra early. But then again, with a baby that we have to feed and everything, it's only so early we can leave. Anywho, so our training was a bit compressed, and so as much as I wanted to be like, screw it, let's just go for the 30 to 35 miles or whatever and hope for the best, I'm really trying to be cautious. I'm still only 10 months postpartum. I was extremely, had a pretty bad injury after my first daughter, again, because I ramped up too fast. And I'm not so worried about that, but I also just want to be conscientious of the fact that, I don't want to rush the training, and I want to have fun and feel good and feel strong, and I'm not trying to kill myself here.
That's why you've kept to that very regimented PT.
Oh God. Yeah. Also because I have not done my strength training.
Okay.
And I don't think my body's. Oh, I'm the worst. But yeah. Anywho. So there's that aspect. But in an ideal world, we would have even if we decided, because we're gonna end up doing probably about 22, 23 miles. The longest run we've done, by the way, is 16-ish, 16, 17.
Well,
16,
yeah.
17,
well,
I think.
And also
many hours. Though,
reality check. This is like a trail 22, and
yes,
there's gonna be
it's
3,500 feet of elevation.
Yes, it's gonna be hard.
And on the even though the return is net down, that's when you're really going to feel it. Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think what we found in the training is like on that 60-miler run is we're like, yay, it's all downhill. Oh,
Oh
no,
no,
it's
I heard,
downhill.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
But
downhill.
my point just being like in an ideal world, we would have done 20 miles of the 30 or 35 or whatever it was, rather than doing only about 10 or 11 miles of the trail.
I guess time on feet's really more of a factor
Well,
with
no,
this
my
stuff.
point is that if you would stop interrupting me. So usually he gets on my case about me interrupting him.
Sorry.
So just pointing that out there. But anyways,
We can edit this in post.
yeah, right. I know. I'm keeping this in here. I have witnesses now. But my point is that, like, to ask my one of my parents who are watching the kids to then schlep out a whole like an hour and then wait around and then go, it's just too much. It was too much to ask them. So, we're doing what we can. So
No,
that was a
that's
logistical choice.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Anywho, let's talk about training. So training wise, as I said, I was at about 10 miles, but on the East River. So that is not a trail 10. Like, that is just flat, easy, slow, like just kind of chilling out, running along the river kind of pace. Eric had been doing, and by the way, I was only running like once, maybe twice a week, and then Pelotoning maybe a couple other times. So I was reasonably fit and in a good like jumping off point to start building my fitness running wise. But like, I was like really not running very much at all during quarantine. Eric had been running, doing longer loops, but up to 10 to 12? So not much more.
No, I think my total volume was like 20 to 30, and then I was doing
really?
some spinning.
Yeah.
But I wasn't doing, like, there wasn't a lot of frequency. There wasn't a lot of, like, quality or specific work. Because I was just trying to have, like, I was actually trying to minimize the number of times I would go out and do it.
Yeah.
So I would do, like, longer, flat stuff just to get the volume at, like, a reasonable amount.
Anyways, my mileage
Not too
had
scientific.
basically had not exceeded 15 miles ish, maybe a little bit more, but in a year and a half over that, with pregnancy and everything. So yeah, it had been a really long time since I had run very much. So again, we were just being a little bit more cautious and not trying to push ourselves too much, and just taking ourselves with in terms of where we're at. If we had more time, I 100% would have done the entire thing, totally. But for another time. And then we really just I think our goal was maybe 3 times a week of course we had like, we're going to do yoga, we're going to do strength training. We had all these like, we're going to do it on the deck. I think our first week we did some yoga or something, but after that, it just all went out the window.
I had a really good week of like 4 nights of ice cream.
We've been drinking every night here. Oh yeah, we've been eating very well. What we've discovered in my mind, I think coming out here, I mean, my parents have been helping so much, but in a larger space, it's just impossible for me to deal with both. I just need help still. So I haven't actually had that much more free time compared to quarantine, funny enough. Eric's been working full time. I've been working as much as I'm able. And so yeah, but we're still making time. I guess the main difference is we've been able to make time to run 3 to 4 times a week. Recently it's been more like 4, and it would be like in the morning, and we would do a combination of beach runs, and we've been kind of exploring just some other routes. We actually discovered from my neighborhood, I've lived here my entire life, like born and raised, and I just only this trip discovered all these things that are on my doorstep. Is ridiculous. So that's been real fun, being able to now kind of run a little bit more.
I discovered that when the hair salons opened up here and I went to get a haircut,
Oh yeah.
at the start of Nicey Marks, the park that we've been running in, you can actually run all the way from there, connected to the beach, back to your house. And
Yeah, that was cool.
I had no idea any of that stuff was connected, because usually when you're going anywhere, you're on the California highway system, and you're like, this is terrible. But no, they're all connected somehow.
Yeah, so we've actually had some fun exploring my own backyard and running around, because again, normally when we're here, even pre-kids, it was very rushed. We would be here for a week. We'd always go to Nicene or the beach, and we just wouldn't have time to explore. So it's, again, been pretty cool, like just running around locally. But yeah, so we, our runs during the week were pretty much, I don't know, anywhere from 45 minutes to a little over an hour, on the shorter side. Some would have a little speed, but most of the time, like, we haven't been doing much structured stuff.
There was always vert, though. I think that's
Yes.
Even if you were on
Always-
road here,
always elevation.
There's always hills, and so that difference has really been interesting, because comparing kind of where we are now, even with like the hills and the development, where you have like these rollers of like kind of like 100 feet up, 200 feet up and down, it's like we're actually kind of able to go up them.
There's this one. Okay, so in my neighborhood, you can walk or run to the beach, which is obviously amazing, and it's just very lucky. But it's about, I don't know, like a 7-minute run to the beach, like right to the water, and you go down this like huge hill, not this huge hill, and on the way back, it's this other giant hill. And I remember when our first run here, I mean, we were also just absolutely exhausted from travel and quarantining and all that, but I couldn't run it. I couldn't run up. I hadn't done any hills in, again, like over a year and a half. Actually, that's not true. I guess I did run the mini 10K in Central Park when I was pregnant, but still, I hadn't run hills like this. And I was walking it, and now it's like I can just run up it, no problem. It's pretty amazing, actually. Just, I was reminded, because it's been so long since I've done like a kind of training cycle, if you would call it that, what we've done. But our fitness is just improved leaps and bounds, so that's been pretty neat. But yeah, and then really we had like one long run a week, and it started with, I would say, I think our first day we were here, or second day we ran, we were exhausted, and we just managed like an hour or something. But then slowly, as we realized we could do something like what we're doing and training for, and we realized, you know what, it would be really fun to have a goal to kind of just shape our training. We started making a training plan, like a loose training plan, and which we've done many, many times before, and I used to do for clients, but have not been doing so much lately. But yeah, and so we started just kind of doing a very smart, slow and steady plan, building up the long run and doing very specific training. I mean, essentially, we would do like a mixture of really fun single track and Nicene off these little side. There's this amazing loop. If anyone gets a chance, just send me a message and I'll send you a couple of our favorite runs out here. But there's just like super fun loop that just feels like a roller coaster. No one's ever around, and it's just super awesome. And so we do a combination of those, and then also just like literally going up and down the fire road, which is pretty much simulating the kind of thing that we'll be doing. So, we slowly build. And the last run we did was this past Saturday, and we did about 3 hours. And we did basically, up the fire road past this overlook called Sand Point. And it was a little over 16 miles, and I think we went really well.
Yeah, I think also, like, and this is something that, you've talked about for sure. It's like training, even though like the volume wasn't necessarily where we wanted it to be, it was very specific. So, we're like training on kind of like mini versions of the actual race that we're doing. And so,
race.
Or I'm sorry, fun day
fun day.
Yeah, fun day out.
Exploring, trail running adventure.
Yeah. So for this adventure, like that 16 miler, it kind of was very similar to what the 22 would be. We're going uphill half the time, and then we're pounding down half the time. And it's good to kind of, if you can't get exactly what you want in terms of volume and load, you have something that's very specific and very similar to what, the main event is going to be. And then the other thing that I was conscious of, and I don't know if you felt this too, is like you were definitely very smart. Like we had days where we were really thinking about the type of stress that was going on and anxiety, whether it was with the kids or lack of sleep. And, I remember we had many days where it's like, okay, I really wanted to get, all 4 runs in this week, but I'm not going to do it because I didn't get a good night's sleep, or the kids are driving me crazy. And all of that compounded stress can really, especially on this compressed timetable, could just derail the entire thing, right? Like,
it's because I'll add that Eric's had to work New York time out here, so he's up every day at 4:30, not to run but to work now. So his whole schedule has been flipped around, and it's just been a slightly strange schedule out here. But we've been trying to run during our baby's first nap on many days. But yeah, some days we just felt like crap, and we're like, you know what? Nope. That said, I will say that for the first time in a long time, I tried to actually set a schedule, in part just to help my parents predict childcare, because it was like loosey-goosey for weeks, and I think we were all like ready to kill each other. So we set a kind of tentative running schedule of Tuesdays, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, where Tuesday, Thursday would be a beach or kind of on the local roads kind of run. And actually the way you can do it, because obviously you have to think about the tides and everything. If I'm too lazy to look online, we would run up to this point where you can be like on cliffs looking out the ocean. And then if the tide looked good, then you can run down to the beach and check it out. And then Saturday would usually be our long run in Nicene Marks, so up on the trails in the forest. And then Sunday would be like a beach recovery run before our weekly Sunday pancake breakfast with my dad would cook. So it's been like kind of, we've gotten to a nice rhythm, but yeah, many days, we really have to think about how we feel. And when you have like young kids, like sometimes you just don't want to push through it. So, I think we've done a pretty good job balancing that out. And some days we maybe like, a work conflict would come up, or Eric wouldn't feel good and want to run later, or I would run later. And so we would just kind of flip flop around like that. Let's move into the nutrition, because obviously that's a huge piece of this and what this podcast is mostly about. It is getting dark out here and I can no longer see my paper, but that's okay. So as I discussed, it really was an opportunity to experiment a bit. It's been so long since I've done this long stuff, and a while back, when I was doing stuff back in, let's say, like 2015. I had like general things I knew worked for me, but, it's just been a long time since I've really practiced with things. And, having 2 babies and being out of the game for a while, it certainly changes your body and your tolerance and all of that. But I've actually been pleasantly surprised with how well my body's been handling things. Traditionally, I'm very sensitive to foods, and unless I'm moving pretty slowly, it's kind of hard for me to eat things, unless they're like just traditional gels or drinks or things. So it's been actually really fun for me, after so many years of working with other athletes, and particularly with endurance runners and cyclists and other people, to finally turn it all back on myself and treat myself as a client, and also like admit some of the stupid, like incredibly stupid things that we've done, which I've posted on Instagram, and you can check those out. But like, it's just shocking, some of the things that I've done. I'm like, come on, Claire, you know better. So yeah, let's start with that. What are the stupid things? And Eric and I are like notorious for doing stupid things on like hikes, on run. I mean, oh my God, it's just ridiculous.
I know we're talking about nutrition, but like, there's no bounds of the stupidity where like, even something as simple as like, you go to a trail you've been to all the time, you feel super comfortable. I must have 1,000 hours listening to podcasts of various people where they said, "Oh, I've been on this trail 100 times and I had to chop off my leg." Like,
oh God.
So
okay.
like
we didn't do something like that.
No, but
thank God.
but bringing first aid,
yeah,
getting in the habit of that, just some basic types of things. Bug spray, super helpful.
So let's back up for a second. So the stupid things, those were pretty much in our early runs. I mean, we were around hour and a half. We were pretty fine with water and maybe a gel. I think Eric had like some old goos lying around, and I was like, oh, I probably should take something. And like had some of his. I was like, oh yeah, nutrition helps you feel better. Duh. Such an idiot.
Those early runs, I just remember we would always like recap at the end, like, oh, how did you feel? Oh, what did you take? And Claire would be like, I took the same amount of you, and you're like,
no, I took more than you.
You took more than me, and I'm like, I'm like 50 pounds heavier than her. So like, it makes
more than 50 pounds.
I was being nice to myself, but yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
So basically, no. But my favorite ones were the time where Eric forgot my handheld. So I was like, ooh, I'm going to be on top of things and fill my handheld with Tailwind and water. And I think I had like a gel or something. And I forget how long this was going to be for, but I definitely needed calories. And this was after, I think, the previous time I brought like nothing but water and, a 20-ounce bottle. I mean, again, just idiotic things. And I really do think that this is just like me being, tired, always thinking about my kids and and also being out of the game for so long. Obviously, I know better as a dietitian.
How did you feel after that?
Oh, well, no. So Eric left my bottle of Tailwind, mixed Tailwind, and my handheld on the counter in the kitchen. We did not realize it until we got to the trailhead. So all we had was Eric's one bottle of water. And
did we have gels too? Do you remember? I think we did.
I don't know if we did.
What?
I don't know. Yeah. Okay, maybe we had some calories. Let's just put it this way. I am a guzzler. I need lots of water. I think I've determined to be comfortable, I need at least like 25 ounces of water, which really actually in truth is not that much.
Per hour.
Yeah, but in truth is not that much. But like we were running for almost 2 hours, I think, 1.5, 2 hours. And we were like, crap, should we just call the runoff? And we're like, ugh, we don't want to call the runoff. Like the kids are asleep. Like my parents have them. Like we're here. And we're like, fuck it, we're just going to do it. And so, yeah, that was real fun.
I think it helped because I remember it wasn't like particularly hot that day, or at least there was enough.
I felt horrible at the end. I felt horrible. And I was like, thank God I had a bottle of water in the car, which I was almost going to like bring. But it was just
But
not
for summer
fun.
running with a lot of like, tree cover.
It was warm enough.
It was warm, but if it had been warmer, like it would have been a real problem.
Also, Eric this isn't nutrition related per se, but pretty much like every run we started with, Eric got stung by a yellow jacket. So, and there were runs where he got stung twice. So like we're like, is the universe trying to tell us that we shouldn't be running or something? And then there was another run I think where we did some other idiotic nutrition thing, and I can't remember what it was, but let's just say it took far too many times for us to actually plan appropriately and figure out what was going on. And we finally, though, well, I'll say for myself, I feel like I figured it out. Eric, I'm still yelling at you because, as he mentioned, like I'll take, like my goal at this point, I've realized what works well for me when I feel good doing is around like at least 200 calories an hour, a mixture of liquid, so I'm doing Tailwind just to get some salts and like a real slow drip of calories and extra salts in and fluid, and then mostly we actually started, Eric like on his own, just without telling me, bought a whole thing of Spring Energy, and at first I was like, what are you buying Spring Energy for? But I was like, actually I want to try it, and we actually love it. So we have been using Spring Energy gels, so that, and then chopped dates, and so that's mostly where I'm getting calories, and then I have water in my bladder because I'm doing a running vest. And then I'm going to mix some extra Tailwind little mini bottles in my vest. And our main concern, because my bladder only holds 2 liters, my handheld, which I'll have with Tailwind, is 20 ounces. And then I'll have 16 ounces additional in 2 little bottles. So my main thing is water, is like I need to make sure I can refill somewhere. So that's where I'm at. Eric many times will like not even take in as much as me. And I'll be like yelling at him.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. So I guess if I rewind to my like nutrition journey with this stuff, like I've tried a lot of different things, and it all really depends upon like what's like where you are, what's going on. I think what the last like big long event that I did was in 2019 in Rock the Ridge, and in that training cycle I was doing like all liquid nutrition, Tailwind, like one hand. So I was using handhelds because although it's a little bit more of a pain to run with a handheld over a longer distance, what it does let you do is it lets you really keep on top of your fluids and calories on a schedule, because if like, okay, you're up an hour, just down this thing because you got to get another one in the next hour, right?
I'm the same way.
So I found that like super helpful, but again, that's like a race setting, and so in that setting, like you have access to water, you have access to extra calories if you need. It makes it really easy to refill, etc. Yeah. This isn't that at all. So I knew whatever situation that we were going to be doing, that just wasn't going to work for me. And so, we tried the Spring Energy. That's really, really good. I think I'm going to try to do like, I mean, you probably think I need like 100 every 30 minutes, but I'm kind of measuring some intensity too. I think what we realized, as part of one of these training runs, and this is, I guess, why you do it, is we knew, like, we had one, I think it was the 13 miler that I felt like really crappy. Like, it was like, I felt low in salt, and it was like a very, like, we finished kind of strong, but I remember you like looked over at me and you're like, you don't seem okay. I was like, I think I can finish okay, but it didn't feel wonderful. Like, I could tell.
Have you finished any runs feeling good though?
I felt really good on the 16.
You did?
Yeah. Don't you remember we like were pushed up the last 2 or 3
miles?
Oh
yeah. Yeah, you felt good that one.
And the reason I felt good is because I took plenty of calories.
On top of our
I took plenty
nutrition, finally.
Plenty of gels. I took more than I thought I needed because I felt like I was kind of getting behind, and that's something I'll do on the day too. And then also because I would, we kind of realized I need a little bit more salt than what the Spring Energy gels provide. And maybe you could talk a little bit more about that. I also took Tailwind too in a bottle, and that really kind of, I think that closed the gap.
Well, to be honest, I still think that Eric hasn't quite gotten what he needs, which
I
I've
don't
told
think
him many times. That's not a secret.
I don't think I figured it out.
I still think you're underfeeling.
For the 16, I thought it was okay, but
Maybe. I still think he's underfeeling, which we're working on. And the last time we ran, we were kind of practicing some things.
Oh,
The 60 mile, you had the
I
tailwind.
definitely underfueled for Rock the Ridge. For
Yeah,
that.
I know you did.
Yeah. So like then it was like I was on top of it, but I still got behind. So whatever I had planned there didn't quite work either.
Yeah. And so really, like, I mean, and this is what I recommend to other people, but you obviously need to have some sense of, like, well, first of all, you just need to practice. So, like, we've been practicing a lot of different things, a lot of different strategies, and experimenting and figuring out what you feel good doing. And then, like, for, this is a self-supported run. Everything you're doing, anyone out there who's doing something, for the most part, is, well, self-supported or with crew. Obviously, you can have crew helping you, giving you stuff, but many people are doing things that are self-supported, including us. So you have to really know, like, where are water sources if you're refilling.
And you got to be able to problem solve, because like we called to see if the water source is there, but who the hell knows?
I
like,
still
we
am
could
not
show up and it could just be closed.
Well,
and
that
then,
would really screw me over. So we need to look into it.
Well, no, you call them.
I know.
But the way things are changing on the day, it could not be there, and then you have to kind of
we'll figure it out. That's one thing we're still figuring out, but I think we'll be okay. Because as I was saying, like I can only carry so much water, and at the end of the 16 miler, like, I drained every drop of everything I had on me. I definitely need more water than I can carry for a 5 or 6 hour.
I had some.
Yeah. Oh, and then Eric never finishes water, and I always yell at him. But anyways,
okay.
Yeah. So really, it's just experimentation, having a general sense of what you need, what feels good, obviously, and so just taking myself as an example. I'm about 115 pounds. I'm 5'5", almost, not quite. And, I'm not a big person. And, I don't sweat a ton. But I get very thirsty, and personally, I need plain water. I love Tailwind. It's a great product, but I can't just do Tailwind. I need plain water. I get really sick of, like, any type of flavor, and I just need plain water, and I love it. So I do a combo of the Tailwind, just because I love getting the slow drip of calories and salts, and then I wash things out when needed, as according to thirst, with plain water. And then on a schedule, I take some sort of product or gel or food or whatever. So in this case, we discovered that we actually really like Spring Energy gels. In the past, we've done Huma, we've done what else have we done before?
Goo, just the basic.
I don't personally hate Goo, but I mean, there are a bunch of, like, we've done Hammer, we've done
V-Fuel.
V-Fuel.
Oh
God,
yeah, that was terrible.
I know we've done a variety of things, but for me personally, gels work pretty well. Just because I like just knowing, again, this is number of calories, but I also like having real food. So I've been doing chopped dates, like the kind, like in the past I've done like whole dates, but it's less sticky if you do chopped dates, and it's like coated in like oat flour or something like that. And I just get a bag and just reach in and nibble on them when needed, wash down with some water, and then gels on a schedule.
Did you put salt in the date bag?
I didn't try that yet, but I'm planning on doing that. The Spring Energy, like the Spring Energy gels are really interesting. I think it's a very interesting product, only because they're all so different. From the sodium content, I mean, the carb content is high, and I know that's part of their whole thing. But I wasn't sure how it would handle having more fat. Like, one of their products, one of the gels is 250 calories, which I cannot take all at one go. So I would take half, then half a little later, but it was like 19 grams of fat, which is a lot for a running product. But for when you're out in the trails, and moving a little bit more slowly, and depending on what point in the run, and obviously depending on your own tolerance and everything, I actually found it quite interesting. And I've been playing around more with caffeine. So my plan, we kind of laid everything out, and I think I posted a picture on Instagram at one point, but I'm basically counting on getting at least 200 calories, a combo of liquid and the gels. It'll be a variety of different gels. We're obviously going to have a good breakfast before, probably be some sort of peanut butter banana sandwich, something we can take on the road, and coffee. And we're bringing for a, quote unquote lunch, this, what I think it's a Spring Energy product. It's like basically like an oatmeal type of thing. But we're also bringing extra gels, extra Tailwind, just extra calories. You always want to have extra calories, just as you would, first aid and other things. Like, you just always want to be prepared, in case you lose one, in case you need more, in case you taste something and it's just like, oh my God, I can't have this. Because, if you're running a race, especially like on the trails, like, you're used to having aid stations where you can scan the table. It'll be different obviously post-COVID, but normally in normal life, like, you scan the tables and you're like, ooh, what sounds good? I'll grab this and grab that. Ew, that looks gross. I don't want that. When you're self-supported, you don't have that option. You have to just bring a bunch of stuff.
Can you even like get your head around like aid station tables now, and like how many, like,
ooh, I don't know.
Like,
all the times I've like reached my hand like a bowl of nastiness. I don't know.
I was just like, when this stuff started happening, I started to like rewind through my mind,
I know.
like all of the tables.
Let's not even
of
talk
like,
about it. Whatever.
Yeah.
Even like marathoning, it's like all the gross stuff that you grab. Yeah. So that's just some of, and Eric, I think, has a similar kind of approach. He's doing a combo of Tailwind and Spring Energy, just more of it. And one thing I was encouraging him to do, as I'm doing myself, is really just like starting the slow drip immediately, not because originally he was like, oh, I'm going to wait for the tail until I need it. I'm like, no, dude, you got to take that now. Like, take it early, like, start now. It's just like, you're not waiting till you're hungry. As you guys know, like hunger isn't necessarily something you always feel when you're doing something. Although you can, obviously.
Look, I think, I'm not saying you're not right, because every time you tell me to do something and I do it, it all works out with this stuff. But what I think what I've been kind of thinking about too is that, again, like going back to the goals of what it is that we're doing. I'm there to have a good time, and we are going on trails, and we are going to go at lower intensity. We're not going to be like hammering out of the gate.
No, we're doing lots of walking. It's a lot of uphill.
There's going to be some we may take a picture.
We'll take like 1,000 pictures. It's probably going to take us like 6 hours.
Yeah, and so I think because of that, I do have a little bit more grace with kind of how I'm going to take calories in or salts in, kind of as I'm feeling. Not to get behind, but I think like for me, in some settings, it's like all about like, I have the plan, I have the schedule, you're just executing. In other cases, I'm relying a little bit more on feel a little bit. And so I think this is one of those cases where, on the day, I'm going to try to be really in touch with kind of how I'm feeling, how we're doing, how are we moving against the pacing that we're trying to achieve to get back at a certain, all those things, to try to like, not be over analytical with it, not add stress to a fun day, but be smart and sensible, and try to kind of listen to your body too,
I mean, it's always a combination of listening to your body and sticking and kind of executing a plan. And I think, and this is often what I talk about with people, like, there's a concept of intuitive eating where, with everyday eating, and you are listening to your body, but like there's also like objective things like I'm running 40 miles a week. Like, I need a certain number of, calories or a certain amount of food to fuel what I'm doing, to recover well, to feel good, etc. Not that like I would ever encourage anyone to count calories or anything like that. I never do that with my clients. But there are certain objective things of truths or whatever that we know. So like there's certain sports nutrition principles and guidelines that we're encouraging you to stick to, even though you don't necessarily feel in your body that you want those. Like I mean, there was one long run we had where I was really queasy since the night before for unknown reasons. I don't know if I ate something funny or what, but oh my God, trying to choke down that first gel was the worst. I felt so sick, but like I knew I needed it. And I knew that if I just took it in slowly, it would be okay. And we were not pushing it, and it was fine. But obviously, like, there are lots of different things you can do. And like, if you're sick or if you're really not feeling something, like, you can change course, you can choose something else that you have available. Obviously, again, when it's something self-supported, it's a little hard because you only have what you have on you. And if you're somewhere remote and you can't just go into the deli and choose something else, versus running around New York City, it's obviously a lot harder. So yes, we absolutely want to listen to our bodies and do all that, drink, with thirst and all that. But you have to also be mindful of the fact that when it comes to challenging, athletic endeavors, like sometimes your body isn't always reliable, and you do need to check in with that, and compare against like what you're feeling. So that's kind of always what I try to tell people. Anyways, we're rambling a ton. It's almost an hour and we haven't even done our recap yet. So I think we really need to cut this short, or not short. It's not so short.
You already talked about gear. You didn't want to talk
Yeah,
about
I mean, for gear, I don't think we need to mention too much, only that we each have vests, running vests we're wearing with bladders. Again, like we're not gonna be able to carry as much water as we need. We do not have filtration systems, so we're not trying to get like, creek water or whatever. I don't know. So we're really hoping that we can get some potable water in the Big Basin campsite. It's open. I don't see any reason why we won't be able to, but we just have to be mindful of that and kind of take one last look at that tomorrow, before kind of making our final arrangements. But yeah, otherwise I'm, definitely bringing the bug spray. Hopefully Eric doesn't get stung by more bees. Like that literally happened, 4 different runs in the exact same spot. It was ridiculous. They didn't touch me. I get eaten alive by mosquitoes, but
yeah, apparently
you and the yellow jackets, man.
Apparently you can build like some level of like sting immunity to it, but it's not that they don't sting you. It's just that it hurts less. So far,
Great.
I have yet to experience that.
Wonderful. But yeah, otherwise gear, I actually purchased my first pair of hokas. I had these I've been running in Pearl Zoomies forever. They're super old. They do not make running shoes anymore. I mean, the shoes themselves weren't old, but they stopped making running shoes a long time ago, and I just bought a bunch because I loved them. So I finally got a pair of hokas. Which ones did I get? The Challenge? ATR Challengers?
ATR Challengers.
Yeah, and they're great. I keep getting a little bit of a hot spot and a blister in this one spot on my left foot, but as long as I lube it up, it's actually been okay, and they're really cushy and great, and really happy to finally have a nice pair of trail shoes out in California. They're gonna be my California shoes. I'm leaving them out here. So yeah, I think it should be fine. We're gonna bring some first aid. I'll bring a windbreaker just in case, visor. But yeah, otherwise, and the handheld because I need some more water. But yeah, that's about it. Anything you want to add to that?
No, not really. I mean, I'm running. What am I running at? I'm running in the Nike Pegasus 37 trails. I'm not like a.
And don't worry, I gave him crap for buying Nike. FYI.
Well, Nike, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Nike. I mean, traditionally I've worn a lot of Hokas and Solomons, but their trail running specific shoes are pretty great, I think. And I'm sure they'll fuck it up, but until then, yeah, I mean they're really good for like California specific trails. They don't have like a ton of rock plater protection, but they're pretty good for this sort of thing. I don't think I would wear them for like a 50 miler. I think that, although I guess I have done, and I think I found that they were just the lack of protection and cushioning for me personally, because I'm a bit of a heavier runner. Like it just doesn't do the job. But otherwise, yeah, all the basics of actually, I think I was thinking about this, that all the stuff that we're running in, I think I've done like more, variants of major runs in all of this stuff. So there's nothing too new. I guess the newest thing is they have a Run and Rabbit shirt, which is like a California company that, like, I don't know what they put in their materials, but it's
super
awesome. It's
so
super
cozy,
comfy. Yeah, really awesome.
And one last note on nutrition, I would say, like, definitely in the car, we're going to pack tons of water, lots of snacks, something to eat after we get back, because it'll be a little while before we can kind of drive. I think ideally, this is where, like, I normally would have some sort of recovery shake or just something on hand, but I might just make some sandwiches, put in a cooler. I don't know. I haven't really thought that far ahead yet, but we'll probably put something in there, or maybe we'll just drive to our local taqueria and get a big ass burrito. I don't know. That's been our post run situation lately.
We should do both.
Yeah, both. But yeah, we're definitely going to focus on some recovery stuff and just have lots of water in there. And yeah, anything else you want to add before all this? Yeah, I think we're really stoked for this run. And as we said, if it's like a total fail, like it's really just not a big deal. And actually one more thing I will add is we did like our last quote long run, just like kind of a shorter run, 8-ish miles or so, this past weekend. And, we were both saying, this was before a 16 mile. This is for a 16 mile. And we were both so tired getting the car and creaky, and it was early. And those feelings where you're just like, oh God, what am I doing?
I don't think I was
this?
warmed up for an hour.
But we were both, we parked a little further into the park as we normally do. And we were like, no one was there. We're like, you know what? we could also just sleep in the car for 3 hours and no one would know. And we could just say that we did 16 miles. And I was like, as we were like pushing ourselves up the hill, I was telling Eric, I'm like, there's just, I don't know. It's very empowering. And part of me is just like, why are we doing this? But then I'm like, this is really awesome. And I love how I feel.
It's just who we are.
Well, yeah, but you know what? For a long time, I just like wasn't really into it. And part of it was like, I love New York, don't get me wrong, but there are only so many times you can run around Central Park or East River or whatever. And I mean, yes, the skyline's beautiful and all that stuff, and I do miss it, but it's for me personally, like being out in the forest and the trails, like, and just out in nature in the middle of nowhere, it's just super quiet and peaceful. Like, it's just such a different experience, and it's just so amazing. And also it was really just, I feel so powerful, like, because running up the fire road, I won't lie, it's definitely not as exciting as obviously running some of these like single track amazing trails that we were kind of alternating between with the fire road. So that day it was like, this is work, this is training, but it was also just so fun, and we felt so strong and so powerful, and it was just really nice. As I said, it just made me feel like I finally got my running mojo back, and it really just stoked the fire of like, whoa, maybe I do want to do 50Ks and 50 milers and God knows what else, again. Like, maybe that's something actually I'm ready to do again. And so that's actually been really fun for me. Anywho, okay, we're at the hour mark. I think we should wrap it up. And I guess the next time you'll hear from us, it'll be post-running adventure. We can fill you in on what hopefully will be a great day.
To be continued.
To be continued. Talk soon. So that's how our morning started, bright and early before 6 a.m. They were adorable, but they were jumping and screaming in our bed. Very cute. But it reminded me how pre-kids, you'd get up early for an event, get yourself ready, get out, do your thing, come back exhausted, crash. And with kids now, you parent, you get ready, you do your event, you come back, you parent, and it is way more exhausting, but amazing too. So the girls were adorable, jumping all over the bed. We managed to get ourselves ready, eat something. I had meant to pack us in our room in our little cooler peanut butter banana sandwiches, but of course ran out of not frozen bread and decided instead to make some flour tortilla peanut butter sandwiches, which I discovered in the morning were disgusting. Although Eric still ate his, I decided to sneak out and make myself a regular sandwich with some coffee, of course, and we miraculously managed to get out of the house by 7 a.m. without the kids going berserk because we had packed the car the night before and drove over there in the fog and got to Wattle Beach around 7:45. There were tons of surfers there. It was gorgeous, and we looked up in the mountains, and it was very foggy, but you could see all the redwoods, and we were super stoked. So we got on our way. I think it was about 8:23 that we actually started our run, and as you will hear in the voice memos we decided to record just to capture the spirit of our run. We hit a few snafus, but overall it was an awesome day. So have a listen to the voice memos, and of course we'll do a little recap afterwards to fill in the rest of the details.
Okay, 2 miles in. How you feeling?
Good. It's gorgeous. We're trying not to get lost. And no, it's a beautiful, beautiful day. The little segment that we were planning on doing is slightly longer, Eric, than I was told. So it looks like if we make it to our water
All right, let's
stop,
say battery life.
Hey, wait. If we make it to our water stop, then we're going to be running 26 miles, not 23. Yay! So we're about 8.5 miles into our run, depending on whose watch you trust. We just stopped for a little nutrition break. And yeah, I'd say things are going well so far. We made some discoveries about certain loops. Certain things are closed, but I actually expected... what are you doing? Oh, Eric's like squeezing out complete like puddles of sweat from his shirt. We're being eaten alive by mosquitoes. Ugh. But I expected, at the start of our run to basically start climbing a mountain, and it was really runnable and open and smooth. And then it got into, the more forested areas and a little more technical and rocky and all of that. So I think we're about, hopefully, 4 miles out from Big Basin headquarters, which is our target.
I think only 1 or 2, actually.
Really? Okay, well, we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's really beautiful. We're having a good time. We've only gotten to one fight about Eric's nutrition so far. We haven't killed each other yet. And yeah, so we'll update you once we get there. All right, so we made it to Big Basin State Park headquarters, and we found water, so that's super exciting. Very crowded here, and we're just trying to get out. A lot of bees. We're getting eaten up alive by mosquitoes. And we had our little quote-unquote lunch of this oatmeal packet thing from Spring Energy that was quite tasty, and just feeling very happy to be completely full up with water. And we're gonna go north a little bit further because it turns out there were all these detours that cut it short and also added some extra climbing, so should be fun. But we're feeling really good and having fun, and we saw lots of little bunnies on the trail, and it was just pretty epic, but definitely getting more crowded, so we're gonna keep going on our way. So we somehow ended up on a different trail heading back. We're not really sure where we're going, but there are lots of detours here, and hopefully we're on the right path. It did say back to Wattle Beach. We're just not sure via which crazy loop we're going to go on, but still feeling good, got plenty of water, so I guess we'll just see what happens. This is kind of like a mystery mileage long run day, so we'll see what happens, but hopefully
There's no cell service.
Yeah, good thing there's no cell service. But no, it's at least it's beautiful, and we're still feeling good, and yeah, we'll see what happens. We are back on track. We just passed the waterfall we saw before. We have about 6 miles back to the beach, feeling good and happy we did not get lost and sucked into some unknown crazy long loop. So things are looking good for a strong finish, maybe a little bit under what we initially thought, because of the detours cut off a huge chunk of mileage, but that's okay. Better to finish feeling good than to hurt ourselves and go too far. So all is going well on the trails. So we finished. We did it in about 5 hours and 50 minutes elapsed, and we're feeling pretty good. Just a few blisters and chafing and 2 bee stings on Eric, of course, because he's always getting them. But it is a gorgeous day, and we felt really strong and took a lot of nutrition in, and now we're going to run into the very cold ocean water to cool off. But really, overall, it was a very successful day. So more in our recap to come. So I'm really glad that we took those voice memos, because we definitely had an awesome day, and I think it really captured some key moments in our day, as you may have, observed, that maybe we wouldn't have been able to properly capture in our recap right now. We're sitting out on our deck again, still being eaten alive by mosquitoes. I'm just a target, and Eric's a bee target, and so we're not too surprised he got stung again. But I think overall it was a real success. And I guess just some overall thoughts on the whole thing. I'll definitely focus on some nutrition aspects. I want to get into that. But I think it was just really amazing to, first of all, do something new. It's the first time I've run in a new place in years. And I was telling Eric and just thinking to myself that it was really the first time I've kind of felt like myself in my own body in a really long time. And anyone out there with kids, and especially women, after, being pregnant and delivering and being a new mom, your body just changes so much, and it feels like it takes a long time to kind of feel like yourself again, even if you're back to racing. I don't know, that's at least my experience. So it was really, really empowering and awesome to be running so strong, to be feeling so solid pretty much the entire time, and to finish feeling like I had many miles left in the tank. And it was funny, though, because Eric and I were joking about, in the beginning, we thought, we're like, whoa. So we thought we were doing 23 miles. And actually, we're doing a trail marathon today. Okay. Which at first I was like, oh, my God. But then I kind of wrapped my head around that. And for for a huge chunk of the first part, I was like, okay, so I'm running a trail marathon. Sweet. This is amazing. I haven't run a marathon period in a really long time. And I was really stoked about it. And then we discovered that, in fact, it was going to be more like, the 22, 23 miles. And I almost felt disappointed. And then, I don't know, we were kind of like going back and forth about it, that it was like a little bit of ego too. But I had to keep reminding myself that I, am really proud of myself about where I'm at. And I think it's very easy for, maybe some of my listeners can relate, but it's very easy to kind of fall into the comparison trap or get ahead of yourself and really just not appreciate where you're at right now. And so I'm kind of reminding myself through this podcast that I'm in a really good place, and it was really awesome to run for almost 6 hours and run about 22, 23 miles. Again, hard to tell based on whose watch she's trust. But, feeling really, really strong and like I could have kept going. So that really encouraged me and made me realize that I am so down to do longer stuff again, and I haven't felt this way in a while. So that was pretty cool. I'm going to turn it over to Eric. Eric, just some general thoughts before we get into nutrition details and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was a really great day. I mean, I think, how good you were feeling. Like, I was feeling really good and really excited to be somewhere new. It was really beautiful. I also had that feeling of confusion because we were both feeling really, really good after like 3 or 4 hours. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking of every long race I've ever run where, where like 3 or 4 hours into the run, you feel really, really good. And then you crash and burn. And I really didn't want to set us up for crashing and burning in the middle of the forest, right? With kids waiting for us at the end. So I think we balanced everything really, really well. It was a really awesome day. It was a really awesome day.
Yeah, and a huge part of that was nutrition, of course. I was feeling so strong, and my energy levels were fantastic, and like that all came down to the fact that like I was just pumping calories into myself basically, but not going overboard, but we had a pretty solid nutrition plan, or at least for myself, I had a really solid nutrition plan. There was a memo about fighting about Eric's nutrition. We got in an argument about Eric's salts. So of course, as a sports dietitian, I can't help but comment on what my husband is doing. And I guess that really made him mad at one point.
It was so much fun. I wasn't as mad as when you tried to patch the place that I got stung by the bee, but
what? Patch?
Yeah, because you were trying to like adjust the sleeve where I had just gotten
sorry.
stung.
Yeah,
but
that was an accident. But
yeah.
Anyways, we got past it. But no, I felt like I really, really nailed my nutrition. Not to say I haven't done it in the past, but I felt like my own nutrition, like all the pieces of that puzzle were finally together. And in the past, I just haven't done it as well. And part of it is discovering some new products. Spring Energy, I mentioned. I did Tailwind as well. And I should have a Spring Energy code for a discount, by the way. If anyone's interested in trying it, hit me up, or I'll put it in the show notes. I haven't received it yet. But really, really impressed by that product. And I was really nervous that my stomach wouldn't handle it because some of them have a lot more fat. But like I was handling everything. And I think I've just gone through my whole running life just with the assumption that I have a really sensitive stomach, but it seems at least later in life things have kind of improved on that front, at least, and certainly with trail running, where of course you're moving a little bit more slowly, at least I am, and especially when you're climbing mountains. So that was really awesome. I brought with me, in terms of the gels, Spring Energy gels, the Wolf Pack, which is the oatmeal thing, and 2 Tailwind packets, each 200 calories. And I think I brought a total of 1860 calories. My 2-liter water plus handheld 20-ounce, and the handheld have Tailwind in it. And then another Tailwind was in 2 little bottles separated into, on my vest. And plus a big bag of chopped dates mixed with salt. That was money. Oh my God, that tasted so good. That sweet salty combo, delish. Really, I was just like pulling into that and snacking on that here and there. And I had this Lululemon running skirt that had all these side pockets, so I had all these things stashed all over the place, and that worked great for me. Basically, it was I had the 200 calories of Tailwind that I took over about 2 hours as my baseline, salts and calories. And then I made up the rest in dates and gels. And then once the Tailwind ran out, I just increased the frequency of my gels. So I was still getting over 200 calories an hour. And I finished the run with 2 gels left because I want to make sure I brought extra. And I calculated that I averaged about 280 calories an hour, which was really quite good for me. And I don't think I've ever gotten myself to take that much before. And it was really good. So that was a huge success, and really just another, affirmation that practicing, planning, experimenting, and trying, and executing your plan. And I'm not saying it was like absolutely on target, perfect. I think at the end, both of us were just like shoving calories in our mouth, like with no real frequency. It was a lot. So we were just trying to get it in, and I couldn't even remember the last time I did it, but it was very frequent. And I was just, because it felt good, and I took it, and it was great. So it was a real good combo of a plan and listening to your body. Eric, what do you have to say about your nutrition?
Yeah, I think it went pretty well. I probably underfueled a little bit, but that's just kind of like the thing that I do.
Yeah.
But I think you talk about that fight. I mean, basically it's all good advice, right? Like the advice is to fuel early and fuel often, kind of before you get too far behind, because after like 2 or 3 hours, by then like you're kind of screwed, right? So I wound up taking a bit more tailwind, a bit more electrolytes earlier. I think that was really a smart move. I probably could have done with more than we had. We just didn't have probably enough to carry. I think if I would have had another packet or two, I could have easily taken another 400 calories of tailwind in conjunction with all the solid food that I had. I think that wouldn't have been a stretch. And again, like you, I think my baseline for that was not how I was feeling, because I felt pretty good at the end. It was more a case of the last like 30, 40 minutes. I was like, oh, I have these 3 gels yet. I'm going to take as many as I can as quickly as I can. And that really, that told me that like I was a little under, feeling good, but still a little under. And then also it reminded me of when I've done like much longer races and I've had real low points where like, usually if you have a low point, it's really not that complicated. You've underfueled and you just have to like cram it in as quickly as. So I've had races where like I would take like 2 gels in like 5-minute period to try to catch up. It does help, but you're still kind of in the pain cave for a bit. So if you're going for like to have like even energy for the whole time or try to be time goal, it just doesn't do the job.
That's a lot to process too.
Exactly. So my stomach can kind of take that after the experience of doing it, but it's much better strategy, like what you were saying, was just to like get it in early, get it in often, kind of what take what you need. I mean, I think if I was going to do the exact same thing again, I think the only thing I would have done differently is probably take another 2 packets of the tailwind, concentrate it, but maybe the same amount of fluid.
So if I may offer some additional important details that Eric has left out. The plan for him was also to bring his handheld like me, like I did, so that he could, mix tailwind appropriately. And, so rather than diluting it, mix it in 20 ounces of water, keep track of the calories, and do it that way, because his plan was not to mix a whole bladder 1.5 liters with an appropriate amount of tailwind. We didn't have that much tailwind on us, but also that just wasn't his plan. But without consulting me, which is fine, he can do whatever he wants, his body. But without telling me, and I didn't learn until much later, he actually he didn't bring the handheld, which I did observe, but he dumped the tailwind packet into his bladder and very diluted. And he doesn't exactly have the best track record of drinking from a bladder. So that was what the fight was about, because he was just and when I say fight, it really wasn't a big deal.
But I think what happened too, and we didn't really talk about this, is like I woke up feeling kind of crappy, and my upper back was really hurting, and so I knew from previous experience that if my back is tight,
you don't want the handheld.
Yeah. You want to be hands-free, because it's just going to create more imbalances, and you're going to set yourself up for injury or something bad happening. So I think, like I said, I think it would have been better what you had suggested, to put it in some sort, or maybe even to keep it in reserve for the water fill, but we weren't sure if we were going to hit the water fill.
Yeah.
And I still want to have it trickle in. So I think that was that was kind of the gamble.
Got it.
Yeah, I mean a little bit, but
the problem here, and I guess it's just, this is a good like kind of case study or example, is that he was sipping from a very diluted bladder, 1.5 liters with 200 calories.
I will be the first to admit that wasn't ideal.
And he was just sipping that, where he had concentrated or normally mixed tailwind in a flask on his vest. So the only point I was trying to make to him, I was pointing out that he was just sipping very diluted water. Our gels don't, depending on which one you take, they actually don't have that many salts. So I was trying to point out to him that he was undersalted, and this was over the first hour. And we really wanted to stay on top of it from the beginning. So I recommended that he drink from his more concentrated tailwind, and yeah.
Yeah,
So.
and so I think as a consequence of that too, like the dates with salt were awesome, and I was literally like licking out the salt out of the bag at one point, and then also you didn't see this because you were in the bathroom, but at headquarters when we were reloading things, even though I put one of those tailwind packets back into my bladder, I was also taking it out of there and just drinking it directly.
The tailwind powder?
The tailwind powder,
gross.
yeah. I was just putting it on my tongue because I was like, I just want to get some in now and then put the rest in the bladder. So.
But the lesson that I just want to kind of, again, underline here is you don't want to wait. You never want to wait to catch up with something. You want to start from the beginning. You want to start early. You know, you always like fuel early, fuel often. You don't want to overdo it, obviously. You don't want to make yourself sick. You don't want to oversalt, but you want to be consistent and you want to like, you know, just trickle it in or get the appropriate amount in. So that's really just the big point here.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't stress enough, like all of the planning, you know, Claire really thought out like, okay, this is kind of what you need. We had a really solid plan going in. I think even though we had some things that could be improved, it's a very strange feeling to end like a really long day like this, feeling like you could go back out.
Yeah, I swear I was like, oh man, it's only 23 miles.
I know.
I kept trying to convince,
right?
So I kept trying to convince Eric to go further north on. And let's actually, this is a good segue into the detours. Okay, so it turns out there was some trail damage. When Eric called Big Basin headquarters to find out about water, because that was our main concern, it didn't even occur to us to ask about the trail conditions. And apparently there was quite a bit of damage, like trees that had fallen down or other damage. So there were like all these like crazy detours. And of course with COVID, there were all these one-way trail systems in place as well. And, you know, while we were kind of heading out, we started early enough. There was like barely anyone out there, which was amazing. But then it also, like at certain points, we'd be a little nervous because we're like, oh my God, if something happens, like no one will come find us. We have no cell reception. But, you know, whatever, we were fine. Thankfully, the trail wasn't like too technical and it was pretty runnable. It was gorgeous. If anyone is around the Skyline to Sea Trail, you got to do it. It's gorgeous. But anyways, we
not very technical either.
Yeah, I mean there were some technical there as you get further in. Basically, once you start, I think it was like the voice memo where we got to the waterfall, and I think it was like about 8-ish miles in. We ran into some.
I mean, somebody brought their baby there. There was some random baby.
Oh yeah, there's a random stroller left there with
there.
no sign of a baby, and that was very strange.
Yeah.
Anyways, no, we ran into some campers who were also trail running from Big Basin headquarters, and there were all these intersection points. And of course, we didn't have. There were maps. It was pretty well signposted, but there are all these detours, and we weren't quite sure which way. But they were. I guess there was this like huge 6-mile loop, but we ended up going back to the headquarters, and there were all these detours. And we later looked at the map and ended up like lopping off this huge chunk of mileage. So it wasn't 12 and a half to headquarters as we had thought. It was a little shorter. I think it was probably more like 11 or 11 and a half, something like that. And but originally the plan was we saw this little sign going, you know, to continue north on the Skyline to Sea Trail. I was like, ooh, maybe we can go a little further and, you know, make this the trail marathon after all or whatever, because we were feeling so good. But we decided to check out the water situation first, go to headquarters, had our lunch, all of that. And then we definitely went back the way we came, but then somehow got totally twisted around because there were so many different detours and all the signage was very confusing. And so we somehow ended up on this other trail. So we didn't get the opportunity to go further north on the Skyline to Sea as we had planned to this creeping forest or whatever.
We didn't wind up adding mileage, I think.
No,
but we wound up adding elevation. So there was like another 200 or 300 feet.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
And the elevation profile, it was definitely, the whole thing was very different than we expected because all these detours were taking us on these alternate trails. So it wasn't the Skyline to Sea. It was like the Sunset Trail or I don't know, all these different trails or some connector trail. So yeah, it was a little different than what we expected, which kind of highlights again, whenever you're planning for these self-supported or any kind of trail adventure or really other adventures, you know, this is where bringing extra calories and making sure your water supply is solid. Like that's really important because like one from a voice memo where we like weren't sure where the hell we were. And we knew it intersected the trail at some point. And Eric's GPS watch like did kind of show the route we had taken, and like it was kind of pointing back to it, and it said it was going back to Waldo Beach. But there are all these like crazy like loop trails where you could potentially do an additional 6 miles. Like we just didn't know. So that's where kind of just having some reserves is always a good idea. Because again, these things can be very remote. And the difference between doing this type of thing versus an event is like if something happens, you know, there isn't a crew checking on you and taking your name off a list and all that. So you just have to be extra careful. But
yeah, I mean, I think like, again, like the planning was great. We had reserves. We had the right stuff. You know, nobody got particularly injured. I think you tripped once.
Oh God, I fell once because I got distracted and looked up, and
which is always me.
Got a toe to a root. There were lots of roots and rocks, but no, we were actually okay. I mean, really, it was like like 2 blisters, 2 bee stings, and a fall for me.
Yeah. So with that fall, though, I think the other thing is, you know, it's the redwood forest. It's not particularly hot, but we had a feeling just the way the weather was shaping that it was going to get hotter and hotter as the day went on.
And it did.
And it did, right? So we also were kind of taking that into account, and that was actually part of the reason why you fell, is that the light started to come in and it really started to hide a lot of the stuff, a lot of the terrain that was going on the ground. Yeah.
Actually, no, I got distracted by a hiker. I looked up and then just caught my toe. But anyways, yeah, it did get more crowded as we got to Big Basin. And of course, with COVID, you know, we had our masks and we were trying to just be careful and just get in and out pretty fast. So, but yeah, I think overall that was really, you know, some of the things in our mind. And once we knew we were kind of back on the path, you know, I kept thinking to myself, oh, maybe we can add some miles. But I had this huge blister on my toe that, you know, I never had any issues with. I would have one hot spot. And of course, that problem, it wasn't a problem this day. It was like a different spot. But just goes to show, again, like you can't always predict the problems you're going to have, but you try to prepare the best you can. I think all in all, it was a really good day. There's nothing I really would have changed dramatically. The only thing I wish we had known was, you know, some of these detours, and maybe I should have maybe done my homework and studied the trail a little bit more, which Eric kept yelling at me about. I was kept being like, oh, wow, I didn't know the elevation was like this. And he's like, duh, I sent this to you. I'm like, oh, yeah. So, but anyways, I think just to, you know, sum this up, because I know this has gotten quite long, is, you know, if you're out in this area, definitely an amazing trail. We are really hoping someday to do the race that, you know, is a point-to-point that starts at Skyline and goes to the sea. You know, part of me just wants to like drive out and do the other half of the trail from Saratoga Gap to Big Basin, but it's, you know, it's a big drive from where we're at, and with childcare, it's just too much to ask my parents to do that. It was, I think all in all, we were gone for about, you know, almost 10 hours from the house, and, you know, the girls were great. My parents were amazing. But as long as I've been away from Isla, and it's just a lot to ask my parents to do. Plus, we go back to New York in a couple weeks, so we don't really have time to do too many more adventures. But yeah, anything else to add as we conclude, Eric?
No, not really. I mean, it was a really solid day. It's just, you know, it's strange how in some respects you kind of feels anticlimactic at the end of all of these things. It does in that respect, even though it wasn't a race, it feels exactly like it feels at the end of a race.
Well, kind of, except there was no. I mean, I think it was even more anticlimactic than a race.
You know how after a race that next day you're like, oh, that was amazing. Ugh, what's next?
Well,
you know, but
except there was no big finish line. Yeah. You know, there's no celebration.
The finish line for that trail marathon has got to be awesome, because you're coming down. It's kind of starts to be paved and it opens out into the sea, and you can really kind of imagine, you know, what that would be like. And it definitely, as you were saying before, it kind of gives you that real taste. And also, like, again, I think because of the nutrition and because we weren't depleted, like what we're like 36 hours, 24 hours? 24 hours after the event, I feel totally fine.
I feel totally fine.
Yeah, I feel totally fine. Like, I could probably go out tomorrow and do an easy 10. No big deal.
In my mind, I was like, oh, I'm gonna need all this time to recover. And I'm like, I feel great. I'm like, okay, so let's, like, what other adventures are we gonna do?
I mean, I'm tired.
But
right?
But again, that's like the parenting. Like, we came back and went right into bedtime routine. You know, and anyone with really young kids knows bedtime routine is not easy. So it was like dinner and bedtime. So not even like the bedtime routine. And, you know, Isla had barely eaten all day, and Ariel was being her usual crazy self. So, and we just completely took over. So, you know, we basically had like 2 seconds to shower, and then it was right back into it. But it was nice to come back, and the girls missed us so much. And, you know, it was really fun to share pictures and all of that. So yeah, it was definitely well worth the effort, and looking forward to more adventures. So But this is the last episode of the season 2 of the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed today. I know it was a long and slightly different type of episode, but I have a couple guests lined up for the season. I need to do a little bit more planning for season 3, but I definitely have a couple great guests lined up. And with COVID and still some childcare challenges back in New York City once we're there, I'm unfortunately not going to be able to resume a really regular schedule, but hopefully we'll get some more episodes out for your enjoyment. And of course, as always, if you have any feedback or topic requests or anything like that, shoot me an email, eatforendurance@gmail.com. I am still accepting new clients, at least for the time being. I have a couple slots left, so if you are training, if you're looking for any nutrition advice whatsoever, if you're not training or whatever, hit me up, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Have a good one, guys. Hope you guys are enjoying the summer and having some great adventures of your own.